Hi, welcome to my goal setting blueprint for success. My name is Mike Green, and I'm going to spend the next hour helping you understand how to goal set in a way that can get you to a seven-figure net worth or beyond. I've done this now many times and worked with many people to help them grow their personal situation or their businesses well beyond seven figures. Now, I speak quite quickly, so you can speed up or slow down this recording to enable it to work to your pace. Equally, I suggest as we go through, you stop the recording to complete some of the exercises or fill in the templates that are also available where you downloaded this video. My contact details are on there. If you have any problems at all, please do contact, and one of my team or myself will come back to you if you have any questions around the approach to goal setting. But firstly, let me take you through what we're going to cover in the next hour or so. First thing I'm going to talk about is, what can I teach you? Why me? All too often in life, we take advice from a friend, a neighbor, some random person who happens to be in a bar and talking when we're listening, but we don't necessarily think about that person's qualifications. Have they achieved the things that we want to achieve? Are they qualified to teach you in the area that they're talking about? And I want to talk about why I believe I can teach you about that, about the journey that I've had, how goal setting has transformed my life, and how I can help you do exactly the same. Why should you set goals? Do we really need to be that prescriptive? And I'm going to go through what it does, in terms of brain psychology, behavior, and how it will help drive you forward. We're going to define your success, the vision for what you want to achieve in life or in the next year or in the next 3 years. I'm going to talk about why it's important to get that written down and get a date on it. It's not just something that people say. The psychology is transformational when you follow the tips and tools that we're going to talk about today. I'm going to explain what SMART goals are and how they help you focus in and achieve your goals. I'm going to talk about what I call the sat-nav to your success. And it really is as precise as a sat-nav. When you can get goal setting right, it is like putting a zip code, a postcode into a sat-nav, and it will take you there just one step at a time, one turn at a time. And you don't have to see the whole journey. You don't have to know the whole journey. But if you follow this mapping process, it will take you to where you want to be. I'm going to look at what's holding you back. Why haven't you achieved what you might have wanted to achieve before? And there's lots of psychology in that. I am a behavioral profiler, and I'll tell you why perhaps your goal setting of the past hasn't worked. But then we need to think about how we break that down into our goals down into action, and we need to take action. It's not going to all be plain sailing. In life, in any challenge, we go up and we go down. We go up and we down. We have some setbacks and we move forward. But if we plan for that, if we're aware of that, and if we learn the tools and techniques for overcoming those challenges, it doesn't have to hold us back. We set our goals in concrete, but our plans in sand, and we can adjust the way that we work to make sure that we do get to our destination. And then we're going to talk about getting started. So first thing I want to talk about on this slide is, I don't care what challenges you've had in the past, where you're starting from, whether you've been bust or bankrupt. Myself, I came from a broken home. My dad left when I was 4. Not only did he leave, he took everything with him. We had to move into a caravan or trailer, as you may call it, if depending where you're listening from, for many years. And then we got into a council home. I shared a bed with 2 brothers until I was 11. I shared a bedroom with those brothers until I left home. And then I built business. I tried different things. I failed. The school I'd gone to was once called a demonized depository for social waste by an eminent psychologist who I later met and had some opinions on that. But that's a different story. But what I want to say is, I've made money, I've lost money. And through that journey, I've learned a lot of skills that I'm going to share with you today to change your life. And, Once I learnt those skills, I achieved many great things, not just in business, not just financially, but I've been part of the Clipper Round the World Yacht Race, even though I'd never sailed or been out of my depth in water before. I've climbed mountains, I've run marathons, I've cycled thousands of miles, and I appeared in the UK on Channel 4's Secret Millionaire programme because of my rags to riches story, if you like, and how I've helped individuals and businesses to grow and go beyond the challenges that they face. If you learn to set goals, and if you follow those processes, and if you understand what's been holding you back and move away from those limiting beliefs or limiting behaviors, you really can become unstoppable. And through those processes, apart from just doing those challenges, I've gone from a school that was a demonized depository for social waste to a position where I am now an honorary doctor of education for the work that I've done with schools and universities and companies, helping them overcome challenges and achieve their goals. I currently mentor between 40 and 50 companies at any point in time. I'm on the board personally of over 30 companies. I'm a behavioral profiler because along the way, I wanted to learn more and more to be better and better to achieve more of what I wanted to achieve. Education may let you down when you're in those first school years, but that doesn't mean to say you can't learn, that you shouldn't learn, that you can't then learn anything beyond that period. Sometimes when we take a test to learn to drive, we think we can now drive. But that test is just a measure that you have passed that test. You actually learn to drive often or become a better driver once you set off and you hone those skills. And all through, I am a believer in lifelong learning and honing those skills and working to make sure that we get better and better throughout life. It makes the journey more interesting. I'm a public speaker. I've written a book called Failure Breeds Success, not because I focus on failure, but because I understand the importance of failing along that journey and learning from those challenges. Everything you've ever done or been good at, you were probably not good at to start with. From learning to walk as a tiny toddler, you got up, fell down, got up, fell down, got up, fell down. You didn't just stop. Your desire to walk because other people around you were walking was so high, so inside determined, that it made you keep getting up until you could learn to walk. And you went from a few staggering steps to walking, to running, and to doing it without ever thinking about it. I now develop property from large multiple acre sites to different buildings in a complex, to old listed buildings that are hundreds of years old, to over 100 apartments in a block. I've got a podcast called Success is a System. And when we launched that, literally the first podcast we ever did got us to number 7 in entrepreneurialism in the world and number 21 in business in the world. And we still do that weekly today. That's something you can find and look at if you want. And I've invested in over 30 businesses like Shazam, Chargemaster, and so on. So I do believe that from my humble beginnings, living in a caravan, sharing beds with my brothers, going without, going to school because that was the only place I was going to get a cooked meal sometimes, that I have learnt the things that take me from any challenged beginning to a better place, to a place where just because I've learned the ways to set goals, the ways to break down those goals, the overcoming of the limiting beliefs, I can help you do the same. And I believe, therefore, I'm qualified to help anyone from any background achieve anything they wish if they work the system that I'm going to teach you. But what I would say in anything in life is when you are asking for someone for advice in any area of life, always ask the question, are they qualified to give me this advice? What is their qualification? Have they experienced what I'm experiencing? So, for instance, would you take advice from a homeless person? There's nothing wrong with being homeless. I've been challenged in that way myself before. But at that point, I wasn't in the right place to advise anyone on how to become a millionaire. Equally, if you'd had a privileged upbringing and never really gone without, would you take advice from that person on how to live on a tiny budget? If you wanted to climb Mount Everest, wouldn't you want to speak to somebody who had actually climbed that mountain to get the skills necessary to tell you the challenges you're going to face and to tell you what they did to overcome those challenges? Whatever you want to achieve in life, find someone who's done what you want to do and achieved what you want to achieve and ask them. Take advice from them. And that'll be the best advice, because you can follow in their footsteps. I love the saying that I saw further by standing on the shoulders of giants. And those giants, whether I found them on the internet, in books, or personal mentors, are people who, because they had a bigger vision, a further vision, they'd achieved more, they could teach me to do the same. And I want to share that with you around the subject of goal setting towards your first million, or climbing a mountain, or running a marathon, or whatever it is you want to achieve in life. The principles and the templates that I'm going to share with you work in any of those areas. So firstly, why do we set goals? Why is it important? Why don't we just let life happen? Well, if you were going to get on a plane and you didn't have a destination, and the pilot didn't say where you were going to go and how long it might take, would you feel comfortable that you were just going to set off and you may or may not arrive to an area you may or may not want to go to? To me, goals is no different to setting a map, a journey, deciding where it is you want to be and getting a plan to how to get there. And the difference is dramatic for people who write that down. There's been lots of different studies where the 3% of the population that actually have written goals, not in their head, but written down, thought about, considered, detailed, written down goals, that 3% earn more, 10 times more, in fact, than the 97% that don't write down goals or have goals, to drive them forward. So written goals makes a difference. And it is said, actually, that the top 5%, and these are people who do have goals, do have ambitions, do have clear destinations that they're aiming for, the top 5% of incomes earn more than the whole 95% added together. And do you know what? I've interviewed a lot of those people in my life, on my podcast, as I've asked for mentors. And what I've found is that those people all have written goals. But written goals also give you purpose. They, rather than waking up each day deciding and letting the life happen to you, you have a destination to go to. And your brain, and I'll explain this in a bit more detail, will take you where you set it, like a taxi driver. In fact, your creative subconscious is called the taxi driver. And I'll explain a bit more about that shortly. Goal setting provides clarity and direction. It increases motivation and focus. It will improve your performance, because once you've got a goal set down, whether you consciously do it or not, and I'm going to teach you how to consciously do it, but whether you do or not, your brain knows that's a destination we're aiming for and will constantly challenge you. Are we doing anything today to get us towards that goal? What do we need to do today to achieve that goal that we set? And it creates that motivation and focus in your brain, in your behavior. That leads to improved performance. And when you've got a goal, it improves your accountability and responsibility for achieving that goal. And when you achieve goals along the way, because we're going to break these bigger goals or vision into goals, goals into micro goals, and micro goals into easily achievable daily actions, it will boost your confidence as you start to realize what you can achieve and how those micro goals will add up to something incredible that will be life-changing for you. So the first step of that, and at this point, if you haven't already downloaded the templates that were included in the course, I would urge you to pause this session and download those templates, because we're going to start to work on them. But the first stage, before we actually start to fill in the templates, is to define what you want. Covey called it starting with the end in mind. Now, the process I went through and was lucky enough to be trained by Stephen Covey back in the 90s when I worked with an oil company. And he said, almost, if you want to start with a real end in mind, what would you want at your wake after you died? The loved ones around you, whether they're your friends, your family, your employees, your employers, your community, what would you want those people to say about you, about what you'd achieved in life? And what would be the perfect thing? So, for instance, my brother, I would love him to say something like, Mike was more than a brother. He was my best friend. He was the person I'd go to if I had any challenges in life. And then Covey would say we can work back from something like that to say, if he was to say that, don't you think you would need to see him quite frequently? Don't you think you'd need to be a part of his life? Don't you think you'd need to have more interaction and do things with your brother? So once you start with the end in mind, whether that's a 1 year goal, a 3 year goal, or a lifetime goal, we can start to focus in with clarity on where we want to be and when we want to achieve that goal. A lot of the time people say, I would love to have goals, but I'm just not motivated, Mike. And I ask what they think motivated means. Well, positive. Let me tell you now. 70% of motivation is negative motivation. It's being driven by what we don't want to happen as much as what we do want to happen. So think about that. I wanted my mum not to go without. She'd spent so much of her life looking after us. I didn't want her to go without in her old age. I was driven to give her great things. The same with my children. I didn't want to be a failure again, having failed in business in my 20s and lost everything. So I was driven by what I didn't want as much as I was pulled by what I did want. So if we're looking at the word motivation, what we really want to do is break that word down. It breaks down really clearly into motivation. What's your motive for action? And if we think about that motive, that can sometimes be to get away from something we're scared of or avoiding, or to be pulled towards something that we do want or are going to take great pleasure or positivity from. So I'd ask you, write down one sheet of paper. Where do you want to be? Choose a time frame. I often recommend 3 years. It's a good time frame. If you think to just 1 month or 1 year, often we're too lost in what's going on in the world today, or our country today, or our life today, to be ambitious or driven on that. If we think 3 years, we tend to move away from what's going on in our head today and be a little bit more ambitious. But beyond 3 years, it starts to be a little bit more out of control and not close enough to work towards. So for instance, if I said I could do with losing 2 stone, and I'll do that in 5 years, I don't need to do anything for a couple of years. But if I said I need to lose that, and it's taken me 10 years to put that on, so to rush it, I'm probably going to lose it and put it back on and have this yo-yo approach. But if I change my life over 3 years and set some goals that will help me do that, like running a marathon, and I might start year 1, I want to run 10K. Year 2, I want to run a half marathon. And by the end of year 3, I'm going to get the skills, the fitness, the health to be able to run a marathon, and break that goal down into daily. And when I did that, it was breaking it down into things like, I'm just going to run for 5 minutes the first day, because it was hard, because I hadn't run for so many years. And then 10 minutes. And then I'm going to run a mile and 2 miles and 3 miles, or kilometers, whichever is your preference. But I built up to that. I didn't suddenly go from sofa to a marathon. It takes time, and we break those goals down. And when we break them down, they're very easy and they're very achievable. So where do you want to go? What do you want to achieve? Now, we know about our conscious. A lot of people understand the unconscious. But the thing that a lot of people don't understand, and as a behavioral profiler I learned a lot about, was the creative subconscious, what is often referred to as our taxi driver in our brain. The first question the taxi driver is going to ask you when you get in is, where do you want to go? Now, you could say, just drive me. And they'd say, okay, but you could end up spending a lot of money and ending up where you don't want to be, or in the completely wrong place. You could be more specific and say, I just want to go north, please. Okay, we'll take you north. But really what a taxi driver's after is a very specific address. Literally, if I was in a taxi and I said, take me to Broadway, that's a really long road. And it could be 20 minutes from one end to the other, or even longer. So if I said 97 Broadway, taxi drivers, boom, 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 just like a sat nav, their brain will work out the best route towards that, and off they go. And there is an assumed ability to pay the price of that taxi. And if you were to say, I need to catch a train in 20 minutes, the taxi driver can say, that's just not going to happen, mate. There's no way it's going to take me at least an hour to get across there. Is there a later train? Equally, if you said, I've got a train in an hour, they could say, yep, that's doable, no problem. Or somewhere in between, I'll do my best. So the more specific you can be on that destination, the easier it is for your creative subconscious, your brain, to start to work out the map. The brain is an amazing thing that we are only just starting to understand and appreciate. But if you really take on board some of what I'm going to teach you about this, we can literally not just set goals, writing something down, but we can reprogram your brain towards success and achievement. But you set the timing and the price you're going to pay. So Is it going to be 1 year, 3 years, 5 years? Is it a lifetime goal? Is it just the way you want to live your life? And what price are you willing to pay? There's always a price to pay. The only place where success comes before work is in the dictionary. Everywhere else, work comes first. I know many millionaires and a couple of billionaires. None of them got there through sitting on their behind. They may have it easier now, but when they started, it was hard work. And the more we can be focused, we can make that work less hard, and we can make it more structured. And by breaking it down, we can work out what other people we can bring into our area to help us. Can we find a mentor that can help us? Can we read a book? Can we go onto an online course? What can we learn? What can we do differently, better, best to be better than we are, to get to where we want to be? But there will be a price to pay. So carrying on with that, write down what success looks like. So sometimes people say, I just want to be successful. What does successful mean to you? Does successful mean being able to look after your family? Does successful mean owning a home? Does successful mean running your own business? Does successful mean taking your business from £300,000 or dollars to $3 million? Does success mean having £1 million in the bank? I can't decide that for you, because one of the things that I wrote a book called Failure Breeds Success, and I talk about in chapter 1, first define success. I have a younger brother who for many, many years lived on beaches in India. Now he's got a very successful business, a restaurant in India, but he's still near the beach, and he still shuts that down for a few months a year to go traveling, because that's important to him. But even when he was living on beaches, living on £4 or £5 a day, he would come back to the UK, he would work on building sites for a couple of months, earn a couple of £1,000 and go off and live on beaches again, because to him that was his successful goal. That was where he wanted to be, the life he wanted to lead. And he loved waking up to sunrise every morning, the beach, and sunset every evening with friends and people he'd met along his journey. But for you, what is that vision? And don't write the goal down first. Just one of the things I learned on a Tony Robbins Mastery University course was to write a bit of a page, half a page. What does my life look like in 3 years? And I remember writing things like, I wake up organically, not to an alarm clock. And when I wake up, I can hear the birds singing. I can smell breakfast being cooked. And my wife and I wake up, we have a lovely breakfast. We then decide what we're going to do today. And then if you write that kind of vision, you can start to say, in order to have that, what kind of income would I need? What kind of savings or money in the bank? What kind of job or business would I need to give me those freedoms? What kind of house would I be waking up in? What kind of place? Would it be in the country? Would it be in the city? And when you've got that vision, that will help you determine the goals that are really important to you, rather than the goal that you've heard on telly or you've heard on the radio, or someone else is living a life that you think is great. So you set a goal based on what they've done, rather than thinking about what you really want. So think about that. What is that destination, that end in mind, if you like, in Covey's terms, and write it down. Just take some time. Don't worry about getting it right. Just get something down. Start writing. You'll be amazed what can drop through. And at any point, I'll say again, pause this video. Go off and do that. You can rewind the video. You can watch it many times. Once you've bought it, it's available to you for as long as you want to access it. And we don't learn anything the first time. As I mentioned, when we learned to walk, we got up, fell down, got up, fell down, got up, fell down. We maybe go back and relearn or top up our training, and goal setting or anything in life. We can always be coached to be better. And just on that, with mentors, I always had lots of mentors. I mentor a lot of people now, as I said. The best people in the world, whether they're a world leader, whether they're an Olympic athlete, whether they're, a premier footballer, they still have coaches, they still have managers, and they still have mentors. So whether they're the best in the world, they still recognize the need to have someone who can maybe see some flaws that we can't see in ourselves. Someone who can help us just with a little tip that can get us that little bit better. The difference between ordinary and extraordinary is that little extra. What is that extra? So we can start to look at that. And from that vision, get some pictures, make a mood board if that's what you prefer. I used to do that and put cars or boats and that. And as I got older and as I got more money, those things become a bit less important to me, or I refined exactly which cars and which travel and which destinations I wanted to go to. And from that, we can break that down into goals. So if it's a financial goal, how much money? If it's relationship, what sort of relationship? If it's health, what weight do I want to be? If it's fitness, do I want to be able to box? Do I want to be able to run? Do I want to be able to row? If it's climbing a mountain or anything that's important to you, write down those goals. And if it's not written down with a date on it, it is just a dream. If it's not written down with a date on it, it is just a dream. I say that again and again and again. So against some of these areas, and you'll see in the template, there are areas to put down on the template, and I'll walk through those in a minute. But what are your goals on health, wellness, education, finance, career, business, happiness, relationships, personal hobbies, community? What do you want to do for your community? It was wonderful for me. I did Secret Millionaire program in the UK to be able to help charities. And straight after that program, I raised £100,000 for 100 charities in 100 days. I learned a lot about charities, but I also connected more, because they were all within 20 miles of where I live, about how I could help people in my community. And you know what? When your cup overflows, it's amazing to be able to give more to others, to be able, whether that's more time, more education, more money. To help others is a selfish thing in a sense, because it builds myself. And there's nothing wrong with that kind of selfishness. What we're going to do, I'm going to take you through it, is we're going to put those goals, we're going to break them down, and we're going to start with your current state. Where are you today? We're going to work towards your future state. Where do you want to be? And we're going to get it all on one page, and the journey as well, like a one-page map. Why one page? Well, I'll tell you. One of my mentors used to charge thousands and thousands, £18,000 a day, and that was 20 years ago, as head of corporate restructuring for one of the major global consultancies. And he said, Mike, me and my team will charge millions to help these companies. And the problem is, because they're paying millions, they want 20 folders of output, and they love the fact that all those folders are up there with that research, reports, recommendations, and so on. He said, but I wish they could understand that we'll do that 20 folders of thinking, research, reporting, analysis, recommendations, but we'll put what they need to do on one page. Why? Because if it's on one page, it's more likely to be read. If it's read and read often, it's more likely to be acted on. And if it's acted upon regularly, it's more likely to be delivered. But if it's in 20 folders, it'll sit on a shelf, it won't be read. Because it's not read, it can't possibly be acted on. And because it's not acted upon, it can't possibly be achieved. So again, we're using psychology here. We're using advice that I've got from different mentors that were literally charging millions of pounds to companies to use this kind of advice. And then I worked with him to use my behavioral profiling training to break it down into how can we make it better. And that is where we came up with the one-page transformation or transition mapping. And that's what I'm going to teach you, that process. But first, we want to take those goals that you've written from your vision. We started with a vision, and if you haven't done that, again, stop, take the time, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, whatever time you need, and come back to this after. But we get the vision, and then once we got the vision, in order to be in that vision, to achieve that vision, what goals would I need to achieve, and break down what goals it is that you would need to achieve. But then we need to look at those goals, and there's been lots and lots of research, and I can't find a better acronym than SMART for the way that we write our goals. Specific, measurable, agreed upon if you're involving more people, realistic, and time-based. Sometimes the agreed upon people call achievable as well. There's no point setting a goal that you've got no chance of achieving. And you've got to believe in that a little bit as well. So let's start with specific. Often people say to me, Mike, I just want to be happy. Okay, what does happy mean? Well, I want to be able to wake up naturally. Okay, we're starting to get there now. I want to be not worry about money. Okay, how much money in the bank would make you not worry about money? I want a good relationship. Well, maybe you're working too hard and not spending any time or allocating any time to the people in your life to have the good relationships. And we can start to break that down, and we can start to define. So we don't say, I want to be successful. We say, I want to earn £1 million from my business in the next 3 years, or 10 million, or 100 million. One of my mentees at the moment is absolutely determined, driven, and on track to become a billionaire. So it doesn't matter whether your goal is small and it's just earning enough to live and live on a beach, or whether you want to be a billionaire. Let's be specific. But what we do is we say it's £1 million, or we say it's a 5-bedroom home, or we say I want to climb Everest, or I want to win a gold medal, or I want to become an MP, or I want to become president. It doesn't matter what the goal is. We can then work back from that and say, where are you today, and what do we need to do to get from where we are to where we want to be? So it needs to be specific. The more specific, the better. It needs to be measurable. So if I say lose weight, for instance, how much weight and where am I starting from? So if I know that I'm at 14 stone, I want to get to 12 stone, and I want to do that in 3 months, I can then work back, how much do I need to lose each week, each day? What do I need to change about my next meal? But we can measure that. Now, it needs to be agreed upon if there's a team, and it needs to be achievable. You know, you're not going to go from 14 stone to 12 stone in 1 week unless you cut your leg off. You know, let's be real about these. But you know what? Once you do get a goal and you get a map and you work with people and you get the support, it's amazing what you can achieve. So it's often more than you think you can achieve, but it's got to be real to some degree. Realistic, within the availability of resources, knowledge, and time-based. You know, if we set goals that are tomorrow, we put so much pressure on ourselves, sometimes we're setting ourselves up to fail. If we set goals that are 5, 10, 15 years out, often then there's so much in the future that it doesn't have an impact on our brain to change what we do or what we can achieve today. So let's have a look and revisit those goals and say, are they smart? This is one of the maps that I work out that are available to you. There's 5 maps in the download for you. And they're very simple. Where are we today? You know, I'm earning $20,000. I live in a rented house. I weigh 14 stone. I'm single. Whatever the goals are, they can be business goals. They can be personal goals. It's your decision. What areas do we need to work on? You know, and that could be career, business, education, training. It could be health. It could be relationship. It could be hobbies. And where do we want to be? And once we've worked out where we want to be, we can break it down. If I'm currently got a business turning over 200,000 and I want it to turn over $1 million, I can break that down in. We're going to go from 200,000 to 350 to 600 to $1 million in year 3. But in order to do that, just like setting a map, what we need to do is to say, what's our destination? What's our clear destination, our specific destination by a certain date? But we need to be honest with ourselves about where we are today. One of the biggest challenges I have in the first few sessions, whenever I'm working with a new mentee personally or as a business, is they often sugarcoat or rose color their current position. Oh, we're doing really well. The business is great. Or my relationship's amazing. I love my wife. I love my husband. All of this. And I say, fine. And I am a doctor of education, but I say, treat me like a doctor. If you went to the doctor and you gave him the wrong symptoms, or if you underplayed or overplayed your symptoms, they're going to give you the wrong medicine, and that could kill you. Now, often in advisory, mentoring, it's not going to kill you, but it could kill your motivation. It could kill your business, your relationship, because a doctor can only work on what you're telling them. A mentor can only work on what you're telling them. Your brain needs to understand the reality of where you are. And if you say, well, we're already earning 100,000 when really it's 60, your brain's going to say, no, you're not. You're lying. And already you're in this battle with your brain. So what's your honest current state? And there's no measure that I would hold against someone. I've been homeless. I've lost everything. I've started again. I've helped people who are drug addicts, who are homeless, this mapping works. I've done it with homeless people at a YMCA shelter. I've done it with celebrities. I've done it with businesses. I've done it with individuals, start-up or Fortune 500 companies. It works whether you're an individual, whether you're successful, whether you're just starting out. If you work the system will work for you. So against the goals you set, honest goals, honest current state. What is that current state? Where are you today against that weight, that challenge to run a marathon, that business turnover you want, that income salary that you want? Map onto those templates. Okay, so what's our current state? What's our future state? Where are we today? And where do we want to be in the future? 3 years I always find is perfect, because if we're thinking just 1 year, currently in the UK, some of my mentees are saying, yeah, but there's a cost of living crisis, Mike. We're on the edge of recession. We're just coming out of COVID. And it's hard for their brain to be optimistic. The minute we go to 3 years, they sort of forget the worries of today and they start to dream a little. And a goal is a dream with a date on it. And we can start to be a bit more ambitious. But I want them to be still within a time frame that requires action today, this week, this month, so that we're working towards that and we're not too far out. Once we've got that, we can break that down into smaller goals. And also in the templates, we've got lots of different maps, and I'll quickly walk you through a couple of them. And again, if you've got questions, info@mikegreen with an E on the end.co.uk. I'm more than happy to help you along this process. So let's take a look at some of those maps. There's various different types, because people like to work with different types of maps sometimes. Okay, this one shows the importance of how that map converges to a future position. Where are we today? Put those metrics that we measured ourselves by against our future goals in there. Where do we want to be? What are the optimistic metrics, destinations that we're aiming for? What areas do we need to work on in order to get from where we are to where we want to be? So if this was business, we might have things like people, marketing, sales, product development, finance and legal, board and future proofing. If it was personal, we might have career, relationship, education, training, finances or financial planning, leisure interest or hobbies, and so on. And we can then start to drop in some goals. We take where we are, we look to where we want to be, we've broken it into areas, and we can then write in these segments, okay, to get from where I am to where I want to be on this area. So let's say that was career. In year 1, year 2, year 3, what are the kind of realistic, believable, smart steps that I could achieve to get me from where I am to where I want to be? And then we can break that down. We can go from 3 years into 4 quarters within a year. And again, this is just a different template, but what's our current state that we're starting from today? When we broke down that 3-year goal into 1 year, what was the 1 year breakdown against those goals? These are the areas, whether it's health, sales, relationship. Again, which areas are we working on? And then we've got within a year, quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. And we can break down that again from 3 years to 1 year, from 1 year to 4 quarters, and then from 4 quarters to 3 months within each quarter. And not everyone I work with does all of the breakdowns, but some people go straight from 3 years to what I'm going to do in the 4 weeks of this month. I always find it easier to funnel it down, because you're breaking down into bite-sized actions, and you'll be amazed when you break it down. And I always use a weekly, every single month, the 27th of the month in my diary is a recurring reminder to set the next month's breakdown. And I know the current state at the beginning of any month. I know where I want to be by the end of that month. I know that if this is in mentoring, what do I want to do with my mentees? If this is in local charities, what do I want to achieve there? I'm chairman of the Chamber of Commerce for my area. What do I want to do with that membership? What have I got to achieve in terms of events? If it's development, are we working on a new development? Do I need to get funding this week? And so on and so on. We can break that down literally into week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4 within a month. Now, there are 4.3 weeks in most months, so we've got a bit of buffer on this one as well. And I can't get you into the detail, but you can start to see how this works in some. So this is quarter 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the 3rd of the 1st to the 8th of the 1st, and just literally breaking down into tiny little actions. And you'll see when you break this down, you are literally talking about sometimes call 6 new prospects for maybe getting someone into membership or to sell a product. It might be I'm raising £1 million for a new children's hospital. So one of the goals might be breaking that down into arrange a lunch with one of the people that I think could be a great donor, or have a garden party to raise money for that. It could be lots of different things that we focus on in order to break down to get from where I am to where I want to be. So I talked about mapping and sat nav, and why do I use this as a kind of analogy or metaphor for how you're going to work on this goal setting? Well, sat nav was originally guided missile technology, okay, and it could literally pinpoint to a nearest meter. In the same way, that guided missile technology became satellite navigation, and now it's an app on your phone, Google Maps or what have you, or Waze, or whatever one you tend to use. But what's the first thing we need if we're going to program a sat nav? We need that destination. Now, I could put London into Google Maps and it will take me to London, but it's probably 2 hours to get from one side of London to the other. So the more specific it can be with an exact postcode or an exact address, the more likely it's going to take me there in the most efficient way as quickly as possible. So let's think of goal setting like setting that destination. If we can get our destination that exact, like a zip code, like a postcode, our brain, our creative subconscious will take us there more specifically. And just like a sat nav or a map, what we need to know is it does know where we are, but we need to be honest about where we are to properly let our creative subconscious and our goal setting take us from where we are to where we want to be. And as I said, be honest. My mentor, one of them, used to say, Mike, we all understand the principle of 10 commandments. I'm not a particularly religious person, but I understand the principle. He said if there was an 11th one for business, because the other 10 are about the way you live your life, what would be the 11th commandment? And he said it would be thou shalt not kid thyself. Let's be real about what we're doing, the amount of work we're putting in to get the goals that we want, and what we need to do to achieve the goals that we want to achieve. Because the degree to which you are honest and detailed at this stage of your goal mapping will directly impact the likelihood of you getting there. It's really, really important. That template will guide you through. Oh, sorry, let's go back again. Keep focused in the right direction and don't get distracted. Sometimes when I'm talking to people about mapping, I say, what do you think the importance of mapping? Why do we need that map, that destination? And they say, well, because it tells us what we need to do to get there, what roads, if you like, we need to take if we use a mapping analogy. And I said, yes, but what a lot of people miss is if there's 500,000 roads in the UK or whichever country you're in, the more important thing is the sat-nav is going to take us only on the roads we need to go on. And that seems obvious, but the biggest issue why a lot of people miss goals, fail goals, don't achieve goals, isn't that they don't know what they need to do or what turns to take or what actions to take to achieve their goals. It's that without that sat-nav guided missile focus, they become easily distracted. They're building a good business. They're doing what it takes to build a business. And then, oh, let's look at Bitcoin. There's loads of money in Bitcoin. Or, oh, let's look at property and invest in property because everyone's making money out of property. And they are so easily distracted off. Or I'm really struggling with my diet, so hell, I might as well go for it. It's only one. I've had a tough week. It's only one meal. It's only one drink. And we lose focus. So keep focused in the right direction. Daily interaction with your goals will help. I remember, and I share the story of my youngest, Amelia, when I was teaching her to ride a bike. We live in an area that's in the middle of a lot of farmland, and there's big dikes, valleys, if you like, each side of the road. And we're learning, and she's just taken her first faltering cycle, and I say, oh, Amelia, look at that owl that's flying. It was flying along the side of us. And she turned to look. And as she turned and went into that dike. And I said, Amelia, why did you turn into the dike? And she said, well, you told me to look over there. And when I looked over there, the bike went that way. In a similar way, if we get distracted from where we're going, our focus, our attention, our action tends to go in that direction. Or it certainly stops us being able to go at pace in the direction we want to go. And again, using that mapping or driving analogy, if I'm driving a car at 30 miles an hour, I can look around me. I can see what's going on. I've got lots of time to think. But if I want to achieve big goals at pace, that's like driving a Ferrari at 200 miles an hour. I need to be obsessively focused on where I'm going at that speed, because even a slight distraction for a few seconds can cause me a problem because of the speed at which I'm coming along things. If you understand the importance of that focus and discipline, then you are more likely. In fact, it's hard not to achieve goals when you have that level of focus. Secondly, you will come against challenges, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But if you are focused and you hit a challenge, we can just divert around that challenge rather than going so far off that we're heading in a completely different direction. And so I'll share that with you as well in a little bit. So we've talked a bit about goals. We've talked about your current state, your future state. We've looked at a vision of where you want to be. We've broken that down and we've put it on our template. And we've hopefully even drilled that down into smaller goals that will add up to a bigger goal. But part of the reason that people often fail is they don't feel that they're good enough, or they've got limiting beliefs or limiting behaviors that stop them from achieving. And sometimes that's something that happened in the past and maybe went bust in the past, maybe have had several broken relationships in the past, maybe set goals before and they didn't work, maybe tried to lose weight before and it didn't work. But look at why, what you failed at, look at why you think you failed, and ask yourself the question, I could achieve so much more if, what would you put in there? I could achieve so much more if, and that may be getting rid of a limiting belief or adding a new skill or a new piece of learning or a new piece of support that you could get from someone else that you don't currently have. Have we been given a label in the past, a parent, an uncle, a teacher saying, oh, you're just so stupid, you're so clumsy, you're a bad kid, or whatever it is? We take on those labels, and don't let those labels hold you back. We're all too ready to accept those labels, especially if it's awarded by an elder or leader. Sometimes we think if we haven't got a certain exam qualification, we're not clever. That is just one part of society's label on how to measure your educational ability. It does not mean you are not teachable. I have worked with and am working with people who earn millions of pounds from maybe a plumbing business, an electrical business, an IT business, and yet they didn't finish normal education. On one of my podcasts, if you wanted to find Success is a System, Mike Green podcast with Neville Wright, he went from 37p in the bank and a window cleaner, dyslexic, ADHD, to having £200 million net worth and paying himself millions of pounds a year. But because he wasn't restricted by what society said was his ability, the labels that society wanted to give him. But there is a reality that you are today where you are based on your beliefs, based on your decisions, based on your actions that you take. And it is a reality to say that if you want to achieve some different things in your life, you need to do some different things in your life. Because if you keep doing the same things, you'll keep getting the same things. So part of that is ignoring unqualified critics. We wouldn't let a dentist perform heart surgery on us or a heart surgeon take our teeth out. And if we did, we're going to run the risk of them not being the best person to do that, and something might go wrong. Okay, why would you take advice or opinions of other people? You know, my mum was an incredible woman who brought us up against all the odds, and she could teach me so much about relationships and about how to support children. But she couldn't read and couldn't write and never achieved any level of business success. So whilst I would go to her for advice on bringing my children up, advice on relationships, I wouldn't go to her for business advice. Okay, if someone is unqualified, equally, people are sitting in a bar and someone says, of course, you understand that Bitcoin, what you should do is you should do this. If you've got some money, you should do that. Ask yourself, and I said this before at the beginning, never, ever, ever take advice from an unqualified opinion. You know, it's a blunt saying, but I'm going to say it anyway, because the stronger the saying, sometimes it will cement it in your brain. Opinions are like arseholes. We've all got one, but most of them are full of shit. Do not make your decisions based on unqualified opinions. Okay, we talked about breaking goals down, and people might think, 6 phone calls today, Mike, or one less mouthful at each meal, or, running an extra 100 yards today. That's not going to get me where I want to be. One of the magic, if you like, ingredients to success and goal setting is when you can take a big goal and chunk it down and get to micro goals. Little things make all the difference. If you don't think they can, try spending some time with a mosquito in a room. You can hear it buzzing. You will not sleep. You just know it's there. It's only a tiny thing, but it can completely distract your focus. Equally, I love the story of the inventor of chess. It's a bit of a fable, but the principle is important. The leader of a land says, I want someone to come up with a game that can be educational, fun, competitive, and interesting. And he sent it out to all of the wise people in the world to try and invent this game. And the person who won was the guy who invented chess. And the king found it stimulating, he found it strategic, he found it fun, and he found it challenging. And he said, this is an amazing game. Name your price. I want to reward you for getting this amazing game. And the guy said, it's really simple. All I would like is a grain of corn on the first square and just double it for each square. And the king said, well, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. I mean, I've said you can name anything. Why would you name something so small? And he said, well, I'm happy with that. That's fine. A few days later, the treasurer came to the king and he said, my lord, we can't pay that price. He said, don't be ridiculous. It was 1 doubled to 2, 3, 4, and so on. He said, but when we work it out, my lord, it's more than all the grain in all the land. And, we might think just small steps, small wins aren't enough. But actually, if this month we can get 1 sale, and next month we get 2, and then we double that to 4, and we double that to 8, and we double that to 16, it still feels many months in that it's still small numbers. How can I live off £16 in a month? Let me tell you, if you went across the 64 boards of a chessboard, just doubling 1 to 2 to 4 and carrying on, you will be at 18 quintillion. That's 18 with 18 zeros beyond it by the time you get to 64. And you can see even here as an example, at 20 months in or 20 years in, you're at 500,000. Now, what could you do? Could you go from 1 sale to 2, from 2 to 4? Could you just take the understanding of compound interest from micro goals, small wins, and understand the difference that can make in your life? And I'll use the example of Sir Dave Brailsford when he was the coach for the British cycling team. And they'd never really won. They just never really got the golds, if you like. What he said is, rather than us trying to be 100% better at anything, let's try and be 1% better, just 1% better at everything. And he could look at, is our clothing got a drag factor on it? Can we go for a more smooth clothing that doesn't catch the wind, that doesn't hold it back? Can we change the weight slightly of the bike? Can we change the width and the tread on the tyres? If we can improve everything by just 1%. And because of that, the team thought, yeah, 1%'s easy, 1%'s easy. And they looked at every single element of their performance, of their vehicle, of their clothing, their helmets. And very quickly, he took them from never winning to always winning. And in the 2 Olympics following his involvement, they got 16 gold medals. In 8 years, they won 7 Tour de France. So micro goals can make a massive difference. One of my daughters is an amazing musician. And when she started off on cello, French horn and piano, it would be awful. It would almost make your ears bleed, except the fact she's my daughter and I loved seeing her play music. But she was told just 15 to 20 minutes every single day. 15 to 20 minutes every single day. And now she plays for philharmonic orchestras and is a top quartile, top 1% musician in her chosen instruments just because of 15 to 20 minutes every day. You don't need to spend your whole life working on. You just need to focus on where do we want to be? What areas do I need to work in? What am I going to put my micro focuses on every day? If you haven't got the education you need, read. I was once told, Mike, you need to read for 15 minutes every day. 15 minutes every day is 90 hours a year. If you read for that, readers are leaders. You need to change your thinking. You've got stinking thinking. You are held back by your current beliefs, your limiting beliefs. So you need to start reading more positive books, biographies, different skill sets that you want to achieve around managing people and so on. And so I understood that. And I said, but the problem is, Stuart, I'm so tired by the time I get to bed, I just fall asleep within minutes. He said, well, stand by the bed then. At least if you do fall asleep, you got a 50% chance of falling on the bed. You know, he never was easy on me. But if you're your toughest coach at this point, you'll have the ability to be your best cheerleader in the future. If you can just do some of these things for a short while, it will change your life forever. So we're now to the point where we're talking about you've got your goals, you've broken them down, you've made them smart, you can see exactly what you need to do, but now you've got to take action. What I call get off your butt. Mike, I would do it, but I'm not quite ready yet. Or Mike, I would do it, but I don't know how to do this. Or actually, you say you're busy, but you're spending an hour swiping through Instagram every day. You're spending 2 hours watching your favorite Netflix series every day. For a little while, if you can do today what others will not, you'll be able to live forever as others cannot. And I'm not saying that you don't take the time for a little bit of mindless TV watching occasionally, but be mindful about that mindlessness. So plan it into your day. I recognize that we don't build muscle when we're in the gym. We build muscle after training when we're resting. Equally, we do need to get good sleep. Equally, we do need to have some mindless time, but be in control of that, of how much time it is, when it is, and how it's spent. And make sure that most of your time is productive time. Don't delay, start today. It doesn't have to be perfect. Set off and course correct is a great principle to work to. But focus. If you've got those goals and you've broken those goals down every single day, I look at my 4 weekly goal map every single day. So many people live busy lives and the time just passes. The hours pass, the days pass, the years pass, and then they find themselves at their deathbed. To me, I once heard the saying that the perfect death is to be on your deathbed with your loved ones around you, your best friends, your best family around you. And they tell you that they love you. And you tell them that you love them. That's a good death. The worst death would, instead of those friends and family, to be surrounded by the hopes and dreams that you never fulfilled. And imagine them manifesting themselves and saying to you, I came to you. I was a dream that only you could manifest. I was a hope that only you could deliver. But you didn't. And now I'm going to die with you. It's lack of focus, lack of action that makes the difference. So get off your butt, take action. We've got a goal, we've got a plan, we've got a sat nav to the future on how to do it. You will hit some obstructions, but do what the taxi driver does. We put our goals in concrete, our plans in sand. We can adjust our plans with a detailed plan. If something goes wrong, we only have to divert around that one issue and find a slight flexibility around that goal, but we keep our goals in concrete. It's our plans that we change. If you think you're too busy, I'll tell you now, a homeless person has the same amount of hours as Elon Musk. It's how they use those hours that make the difference. And actually, I used to have a research business, and whenever we had spare time in the questionnaires, we would add some things. Do you know 67% of unemployed people thought they didn't have enough time to do all the things they wanted to do? It's a mindset. It's not a reality. We've all got the same number of hours in every week or day. It's the great leveler. Okay. If you are stuck or feeling that you're too busy, set your brain a question. How can I be more effective? How can I make the use of my time? Where are the time stealers? What's stopping me doing these things? You're only accessing 5% or thereabouts of your brain. And it's much easier to access it all if you set a challenge when you sleep. If you're feeling a bit overwhelmed, I love the saying I got from mountaineering: stop, breathe, think. If you stop, you can get more oxygen, not just to your muscles, but to your brain. If you're running along, your body will prioritize your muscles, your legs, your arms, your heart, your lungs, not necessarily your brain. But if you stop, you can breathe. If you breathe, more oxygen goes to your brain, you can think more clearly. Don't settle. You can have, it's not bad, it's good. It's good. Do you know what? The enemy of the best is the good. And the best is only a little step up from good. It's just a micro focus away from good. Don't wait till it's perfect. The paralysis of analysis, or as I call it, analysis. Don't get anal about why you're not doing it, about what you need to do, about why you can't achieve it. Just do it anyway. If you break it down, there is very little that you can't do on your journey to success. But let me just move this over here. Expect some challenges. You're going to face obstacles along the way. Okay, I've talked about how we can root around them. The fear of failure is what stops a load of people. And often failure, we think it's such a bad thing. I wrote Failure Breeds Success because I understood that it was a part of an ingredient in the recipe of success. It was a part of the journey to success. You are only a failure if you stay in that place. If you move on through that failure, then you can move to success. And as the saying goes, if you're going through hell, keep on going. Why would you choose to stop there? Now, part of what we need to do is to keep ourselves positively programmed. Okay, every morning I'll get up and I'll do some walking in my gym on the treadmill or some rowing, and I'll be watching YouTube. I'll be watching Anthony Robbins, Jim Rohn, Eddie Pinero, different motivational speeches that's programming my brain every day, even if it's only 20 minutes, with some positive. Because a bit like a warm bath, you get relaxed and it's lovely. If you don't keep topping up that hot water, it soon gets tepid, it soon gets cold, starts to get uncomfortable. Keep the positive programming. Don't allow a fallback, burn those bridges. Don't accept or settle for less. The light bulb was never going to evolve from the candle. The car was never going to evolve from the horse. We needed people like Edison, like Ford, who could keep on keeping on even though they failed. Edison failed 10,000 times, but it wasn't all failure. He invented some amazing things along that journey. Keep focused on where you're going, on why you're going there. Do you remember that vision, that mood board? As Covey said, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. Don't let other things become the main thing. The main thing is the goals of today that are going to give me what I want to achieve this week, that is going to give me what I want to achieve this month, this quarter, this year, and get me towards my desired future state. I learned a lot from different challenges that my mentor made me take. So, for instance, Clip Around the World Yacht Race. I hated being out of my depth in water, and so Stuart, one of my mentors, said, "Mike, I want you to cross an ocean." Stuart, are you kidding? This was the boat I was on in West Africa, Clipper 1314. Okay, and when I went for that training, one of the guys sitting next to me said, "What training did we get?" Because we're all novices. And they said, the first day is in the classroom. We go through some of the routes and the time scale. The second day is in the swimming pool. We learn a bit of sea survival with the dinghies and so on. The third day, we find the biggest storm and we head for that storm. And it's like this uncomfortable laughter between everybody. He said, "What? We're novices. Why would we do that?" And he said, "Because we can't train you on calm waters." And that's a great metaphor for life. If you want everything to be easy, you're never going to achieve anything that's great. It's going to be challenging. But you know what? I look back on all those challenges I had, whether it was homelessness, whether it was climbing a mountain, running a marathon, overcoming a business challenge to make more successful businesses. And I've done it many times. Your quality of your life is in direct proportion to the amount of uncertainty and challenges you face. You will experience some challenges along the way. But as I said on the last slide, failure is not the enemy of success or the opposite of success. It is a part of success. So, set off and course correct. It's a lovely saying. We could be going slightly wrong. We'll correct. Okay, make the map a living document. Don't wait until it's perfect. Create unavoidable interaction with your map and goals. So one of the things I recommend in my book and to my mentors is, once we've got that weekly map, I have a copy inside my wardrobe, inside the coffee tea cupboard where I keep my mugs, and in my gym. And so what happens is I wake up in the morning, I open my wardrobe and it's there. Do I stand and read it? Of course I don't. But my subconscious sees it. My subconscious knows what's on it. My subconscious reminds me every day, Mikey, you're doing the things you need to do to get where you need to go. And if I'm in the gym, I'll be watching Eddie Pinero, maybe trotting away on the treadmill, and I'll just look down. It's there on the dashboard. And say, oh yeah, I need to call some people today around this. I need to watch that tutorial on this new tech that I want to use, and so on. Create unavoidable interaction with those goals. If you keep them in your head, it's not going to work. Need to be written down. But if you write them down and tuck them away forever, it's not going to work. We need to interact with them. We need to read it, reread it, focus on it. If it's in your head, the goal's as good as dead. Okay. And then what we can do is, as we're working through our 3-year map with those micro goals, I use a traffic light system. Very simply, the goals I've written in there, have I achieved it? It's green. Am I on track? It's amber. Am I falling behind or failed? It's red. And then it keeps me focused. Those red things I need to fix. I need to get someone else to help me. I need to learn some new skills. The green things, great. Celebrate that success. But when we reward ourselves along the way, make sure it's proportionate. We don't get a goal this month and go out and buy a Ferrari. Delayed gratification is really important, and proportional reward is really important. So you might decide after you've had a successful win, when I sold my first business, I bought a £30,000 Rolex. And is it important? No, I might look at my phone to find the time. But this is a wearable reminder of a great achievement that every single day when I wear it, it reminds me I did that. I achieved that. But some weeks it might be as simple as we're going to have a takeaway on Friday. But if I don't achieve my week's goals, we're not having that takeaway. We're going to cook at home. And it was little wins for little reward. The bigger win, the bigger the reward. You can do anything if you put your mind to it. Dream big dreams, set big goals, and enjoy the journey. You are designed for accomplishment, engineered for success, and endowed with the seeds of greatness. Great people have achieved great things, but also people that come from nothing have achieved incredible things. On one of the earlier slides, you might have seen 70 to 80% of all millionaires and billionaires never even went to university. Now, I'm a doctor of education, so my belief, even though I didn't do well at school, and I went to that school that was called a demonized depository for social waste, if you can have that guttural drive, that goal-setting focus, and education, you become unstoppable. Education on its own will never get you the life you want. And hard work on its own will never get you the life you want. But if you can bring those things together with a good goal-setting plan, you can achieve anything you want to achieve in life. This brings us to the end of our session. We're slightly over the hour. As I say, slow it down. Listen to it again. Stop, go back. Pause it while you work on some of your goals. But just get that plan. The sooner you get that plan, you can start working towards it. You can refine it over time. If you want some more inspiration, follow Mike Green or Success is a System on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts. And if you have any challenges along the way, I want to hear your success. I want to hear your challenges. Email me info@mikegreen.co.uk. You can achieve anything you want in life if you put a plan together and you work towards that plan. I wish you outstanding success, and I look forward to seeing you again on another one of my courses, or maybe in person if ever we meet up. Good luck. Go for it.